Hey everybody, Michael Montero for Boxing Monthly here. This is the Neutral Corner, episode 88. Hope you enjoyed that intro with the fireworks. That was from the roof of my building. And that's just one of the coolest things that I love about LA that I'll always remember. Wherever I go from here, living in a tall building and getting to look out and see literally millions of people lighting fireworks off in every direction. And honestly, that video right there does it no justice. After a little while, there's like a cloud of sulfur over the entire city, and it kind of sat down on the street. When I left to go to work the next morning, there was just it felt like an inch thick layer of like just, the trash, the paper from all the fireworks that landed all over the street. It was a really, really good time. Hope everyone had a fun, safe holiday. I've had a crazy ass week, but particularly the last few days, man. Saturday, I interviewed Bob Canobio, the president and the founder of CompuBox. That's on the channel, so if you haven't seen that yet, check it out. Sunday, I did a couple of segments on the Dave Smith Show on NBC Sports Radio, talking about a few different fights. We reviewed Pacquiao-Horn, we talked about Canelo Golovkin, we talked about the shit show. So check that out. We put a copy or a video copy of that on the channel. The audio isn't great because we recorded it right off the internet stream, but it's still pretty decent, so check that out. And then today, it's Monday night when I'm filming this right now, but this morning, I filmed 8 episodes of 10 Count for Undisputed Champion Network. 5 of them, I was on there as a panel, analyst, and 3 of them I hosted. So all of that, and then I'm doing the Neutral Corner right now. Also, I got to give a shout out to one of the greats, Jake LaMotta. Buon compleanno, signore. It's his birthday. The oldest living world champion in all of boxing. The guy's still going strong, and he's absolutely going to make it to 100. So that just goes to show you, you could be a badass and take a ton of punishment and still live a long, healthy life. It just all comes down to what you do outside the ring and, just your mental focus. Sometimes it just comes down to genetics. But okay, quick housekeeping stuff before we get into news and notes. We will not have an episode next week. I'm going on vacation. I'm actually leaving for Detroit in a few days, and I'll be there for a while visiting family. So any of you guys in Detroit, if you want to meet up with me, comment below here or hit me up on Twitter or on Facebook, whatever it is. And if I hear from enough of you guys, maybe we'll arrange some kind of get-together or some kind of meetup while I'm there in Detroit. So not doing an episode next week, but then we'll be back the following week and we'll be reviewing Broner Garcia. So that's what's up with that. For now, news and notes time. Okay, so not a whole lot of news and notes. The WBO did an official review of the Pacquiao-Horn decision, and they put out a press release this week. Apparently they had 5 judges, 5 as they call them, independent judges. I don't really know what that means. Watch the fight and score it. And they averaged out their scores. They had some kind of percentage formula, 100%, 80%, 60%. You can find it, I'm sure, if you Google it. But basically, they found that Horn won 7 rounds to 5. That was their findings with this independent panel. So they're not going to reverse the Pacquiao-Horn decision. And that never happens, right? The only time a sanctioning organization would reverse a ruling in a fight is if there was proven something egregious, like if there was an actual smoking gun and somebody admitted to paying a judge off, or there was some kind of foul play, some crime was committed, then they'd reverse it. Short of that, the protests that some promoters put up, or this was actually from the Filipino authorities that put up this protest to the WBO, nothing ever comes of this. But they had to do it, and the WBO, let's give them credit, at least they responded and did this review. More and more people I'm talking to, people I respect, thought that Horn may have won that fight. I still do not agree. And again, I'll refer to my interview with Bob Canobio of CompuBox, where we talk specifically about the Pacquiao-Horn fight. Go back and watch that interview I did. But I still feel Pacquiao won the fight. Either way, it's in the bank now. Horn victory. It's solidified by the WBO. We'll see if Pacquiao takes the rematch. I think he will. I think we're going to see them fight again in Australia late this year, possibly early next year. Floyd Mayweather, IRS issues. So it came out this week that he owes a bunch of money in taxes to the IRS, and he's asking basically for an extension until after the McGregor fight so they can pay back some of this money. And some of you guys have asked me, is this all just helping promote the fight with McGregor? It's not. And think about it this way. Their press tour actually kicks off tomorrow here in Los Angeles. I'm not going. I'm boycotting the shit show. But why would they release that during the week of their press tour? If they needed help promoting that fight, which they don't, they wouldn't release information like that on purpose to promote the fight during the week of the international press tour. It doesn't add up. So these IRS issues are legit. And as a matter of fact, when I met Steve Kim earlier this morning before we started shooting our 10 count episodes, and he was talking about that with me, and he was saying that there were actually 2 IRS officials at the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight asking questions. So the issues with, look, Manny Pacquiao has had IRS issues. So does Floyd Mayweather. The crazy thing is that huge $300 million check he got in May of 2015, he should have known right then and there. Cut that in half and give it to Uncle Sam. Cut it in half and give it to the United States government. He didn't do that. The fact that, you know, he's tweeted stuff saying, I kept all the money for myself, blah, blah, blah. Well, Floyd, I mean, duh. You got to give the money over. So, yeah, Floyd's got some legitimate tax issues. But, you know, are you surprised? The one thing, and again, Steve brought this up this morning, so did Doug Fisher. The one thing that stands out is a lot of people want to blame Bob Arum, the promoter, for Manny Pacquiao's money issues and his tax issues in the past, as if a promoter has anything to do with that. That comes down to management, like Kantz and those people in Pacquiao's camp. That's who's responsible for that stuff. It really doesn't fall on Bob Arum. But when Floyd Mayweather has tax issues and IRS issues, that directly involves his advisor, Al Heyman. Remember, Al Heyman technically isn't a promoter. He's an advisor. What does an advisor do? What does a manager do? They advise their client. And for Floyd to be having any kind of IRS issues is mishandling by Al Heyman, his advisor, or it's Floyd not listening to him. So either way, that's really the only real news. Other than that, guys, World Boxing Super Series. Brackets set. The fields are set. Now, I'm going to do a whole video about this thing. As far as I know, it's going to start in September. I don't believe we have a date or a venue yet. But the way it's going to be set up, I think, is every week. It's going to start in September, and then every subsequent week, there's going to be a fight. All 8 fights are set up now in the first round, and it's going to be one week after another. And each one of these fights is going to be the main event of a card somewhere. And the winner, Steve was talking about this morning as well, the winner of each first round bout, they get their purse, but then they get a $1 million bonus. So the money that Richard Schaefer and Sauerland Event have put up, they've raised, I should say. They're not putting up their own money, some, but they've raised, they have investors. It's real. And when this World Boxing Super Series was first announced, I was a complete skeptic. I did not believe in it. I laughed, I scoffed. The whole $50 million thing that apparently they said they had, I didn't believe it. You guys know we have so many rumors all the times about big money being raised, you know. I was just talking about Pacquiao. How many times has he been rumored to be fighting in the United Arab Emirates or something for big money? It always falls through. But give Richard Schaefer credit, man. He's done it. Right now, I'm just going to read off the first round matchups. And again, I don't have time to get into this right now. I will do a video on it. In the cruiserweight field, which is loaded, absolutely loaded, Murat Gassiev is taking on Krzysztof Włodarczyk. That's a great fight. Alexander Usyk is taking on Marco Huck. And I think Usyk was the top seed and picked Marco Huck, who's kind of been at the top of that division forever. That's going to be a fun fight, man. Medius Bredis is fighting Mike Perez, former heavyweight, who used to be a fat heavyweight. Now he's an in-shape, ripped cruiserweight. That's going to be a fun fight. Yunier Dorticos is fighting Dmitry Kudryashov. That's going to be a fun fight. Both of those guys have poor resumes, but the Kudryashov has great power. Dorticos has a good amateur pedigree, so that's going to be a fun contrast of styles. Now, the super middleweight field isn't as stacked, but you know what? I'm starting to warm up to it because you have a few undefeated prospects, and we're going to find out if they're for real or not. And guys, think back to the Super 6 tournament that Showtime did for the super middleweights a few years back. Andre Ward he was known to diehards, but not to casual fans. Yeah, he was a gold medalist in the Olympics, but at that time he wasn't proven as a pro. So he wasn't even a favorite in that tournament, and he grew up before our eyes in that tournament. Could there be somebody like that in this super middleweight field? I don't know, but George Groves, fan favorite over in the UK, he's fighting Jamie Cox. Callum Smith is fighting Eric Skoglund. And the winner between a fight between Chris Eubank and Arthur Abraham, they're fighting this weekend. I think it's going to be Chris Eubank. They're fighting a Turkish fighter, Avni Yildirim. I know I'm butchering these names. And then Jürgen Brammer is fighting Rob Brandt. Rob Brandt, who's really a middleweight, moving up to super middleweight here, he is the only American in this entire tournament. And when this thing, again, when it was first announced, I thought this was just going to be, when you hear Richard Schaefer, you think Al Heyman. I thought this was just going to be your typical Al Heyman crap, with crap matchups, one-sided, you know. But it turns out Richard Schaefer is going his own way. Al Heyman has no involvement in this thing. And you know what? Good. Not to make this anti-Al Heyman or PBC bashing, but you guys have seen how it's gone with PBC. This tournament, this setup is awesome. And one more note about this super middleweight tournament here. You have several UK fighters, right? Several of them. So at some point, you're going to get some really, really fun, interesting domestic UK versus UK matchups that are going to take place, you know, in London. And that's the hotbed of boxing over on that side of the world right now. So imagine at some point if Callum Smith fights George Groves, or if Chris Eubanks fights either of those guys. Those are going to be fun matchups. And I can't wait to see them. And the fans in London, I know you guys can't wait to see that. And maybe not just London, it could be Manchester, whatever. But you're going to get some really, really fun UK-only matchups in that super middleweight tournament. The cruiserweight tournament, all of these guys have passports and have traveled already. They've fought all over the place. So that's going to be a really, really international tournament. So that's it with news and notes. I want to get to some Patreon shout-outs. A couple new patrons on the Montero Unboxing channel. Guy Schneider, Jay Gormley, and Dempsey. Thank you to the three of you for becoming part of the team. Guys, I appreciate it so much. And talking about Patreon, I want to address Cat Clements of Austin, Texas. Guy plays in a band. I know he's been traveling a lot, but he pledged a while back and he wanted to put up a video question. He's just been on the road and couldn't do it. Here's his video question. This is the first video question we've had from one of our patrons so far, so check it out.
Hey Mike, how's it going? Looks like we had another garbage decision ruining a great fight the other night with Pacquiao-Horn. I just wanted to see, what do you think can be done to improve the judging situation in boxing so we get less of these controversial decisions that we've seen so much of lately? Thanks a lot, man. Love the show. Bye.
Well, my man, that's a great question. That's one of those age-old questions in boxing that we are constantly asking and trying to find answers for. So you mentioned Pacquiao-Horn, and you know I've done a lot of material on it. Even today when we were doing episodes of 10 Count for Undisputed Champion Network, we did an episode on it, just talking about the decision and the impact. Improving judges. Well, as far as the technical aspect, several things have been discussed, and people have suggested wearing headphones, soundproof headphones. And I know at least one of the sanctioning bodies has experimented with it. I don't know if they've had mixed results. So they don't know yet if that improves the scoring experience, because sometimes you need to hear what's going on in the ring. Sometimes a fighter gets hit and there's a little grunt or a hiss that the TV doesn't pick up, that if you're sitting 3 rows back, you might not hear, but sitting right on the ring, you hear it. You see a fighter's body language change, the impact of a blow, all that stuff. Sometimes you need to hear what's going on, but judges are affected by the crowd. I think that was the biggest issue of Pacquiao-Horn. So are the headphones a good idea or not? I don't know, but I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it tried on a major fight on HBO or Showtime so the fans can see it and we can all see how that works. Other people have suggested judges watching fights remotely, not being in the arena, Maybe, let's say if a fight's at T-Mobile Arena, there is the MGM Grand's right next door, and the MGM Grand owns the T-Mobile, right? The MGM executives, they own T-Mobile Arena. They're interconnected. And for every T-Mobile fight that we cover, the media center is actually in the MGM Grand. So what if you took the judges and you put them in a closed circuit situation at the MGM Grand or something, so they're close to the bout, so they can go to T-Mobile earlier and see everything and get instructions and talk to whoever they need to talk to, any of the commission people. But they go into a closed room and they score the fight watching remotely. So they get the benefit of seeing all the TV camera angles that fans at home get to see. Because I can tell you guys firsthand, I've scored fights. I shadowed the California State Athletic Commission before on the Bradley Vargas undercard. And sometimes when you're right up on the ring, number one, you're looking up. I mean, picture the fighter's ankle being right here. I mean, that's how it looks, right? And I'm a tall guy, so I'm higher up than some of these people. But on top of that, when they get in the corner and the ref gets between the two of you, you know, the opposite corner, it's hard to see. So having a monitor, even if you are watching live, having a monitor right there or going closed circuit where you're watching the TV broadcast, but then you run into issues where then they're hearing the commentators. Then they're hearing Jim Lampley or Teddy Atlas or whoever it is, and there might be some swaying because of the commentary, right? So then do you watch in a closed circuit situation with no sound? Then we're back to that thing of, well, now they're not hearing any of the punches, any of the impact. It's such a delicate situation, man. For my money, I would like to see the noise-proof headphones with judges ringside. I would like to see monitors ringside where, I'm talking like right here, a monitor right in front of the judge, where they can look up and see what's going on and look right down here and see what's on television. Not hear what's going on, but see it. So they can get both views, so that the replay between rounds, they can look down there and see it. Stuff like that. I also think we need instant replay. I've talked about this before. Judges have to go with the referee's ruling. The referee oftentimes misses a slip or misses a low blow or whatever it is, and the judges have to go with it. We need instant replay. We have to have instant replay. We have 60 seconds between rounds to quickly review something. It will not delay the fight at all. One of the biggest complaints about instant replay, say in the NFL or in Major League Baseball, whatever, is that it delays the game. It's a pause in the game. Well, in boxing, you've already got that 1 minute pause. So why can't the ref and the judges see an instant replay if need be? I think that helps. That's all the technical stuff. When it comes to sanctioning organizations, there has to be accountability. Now go back to earlier this year to when Hassan Naddam won a very disputed decision, a flat-out robbery against Ryota Murata, a much worse decision than Pacquiao-Horn. And the WBA, and I rip the WBA all the time. I can't stand the WBA, right? There's a lot of fuckery there. But I'll give it to Gilberto Mendoza. Not only did he go on a social media tirade ripping that decision and order an immediate rematch, he suspended those two judges for 6 months and stated that they will not be allowed to judge a title fight until they go through training upon their return 6 months from now. That needs to be done more. Now, the WBO, I just talked about a second ago, they responded to a protest. They did a review, and they found that they're supporting their decision, the judge's decision for that fight. I still think the 117-111 card was egregious, and they need to do something with that judge. I think it was Rodin. It was the last name, Rodin. But that was still a competitive fight. One that's falling under the radar. Robert Easter wins over Denis Shafikov. Now, I think Robert Easter edged that fight. I think he beat Shafikov by a point or two because of the early lead he built up. Shafikov won the second half of the fight. But two of those judges had it 121-08 for Robert Easter. This was a card in Toledo. I believe it was in Toledo, Ohio. And these were Ohio judges. PBC card. Easter's the PBC fighter, the house fighter. That's egregious. That is, in my opinion, borderline corruption. That just looks bad. And I've contacted the IBF multiple times for interviews, asking what they're going to do. There's been zero accountability. So, guys, what you can do, and I've said this multiple times, put the power in your hands. Whatever sanctioning organization is approving the judges for whatever title fight it is, if there's a bad decision and they don't respond, call them out. Tweet the IBF's page. Go to the IBF's Facebook page. Blow them up. Annoy these people until they start taking action. The best thing we can do to fix some of the scoring issues in boxing is hold the judges accountable. And when the judges aren't held accountable, you guys, us in the media, and you guys out there, let's hold the people who appoint these judges accountable. And that's the sanctioning organizations, that's the promoter. Blow these people up on social media. That's the best thing you can do right now. Thank you so much for the question, man. Let's get into the review, the review of what happened last week. Okay, so last week was, holiday week. There wasn't a whole lot of action, but a few things of note. Sakio Bika, remember him? He scored a 7th round TKO win. It was his first fight since April 2015 when he lost the decision to Adonis Stevenson in Quebec. So back in his homeland, he scores a 7th round TKO win. I'm not sure what he's planning to do with this. I want to say he's 38, 39 years old. I don't know if he was just trying to get back in the ring because he missed it. One thing about Bika, tough, durable guy, but this doesn't warrant a title shot or anything like that, so I don't know what's going on there. I just thought it was interesting that he got back in the ring after a 2-year-plus break at this stage in his life. You'd think he saved some money from all those title fights he had. Filipino featherweight prospect Mark Magsoyo improved to 17-0 with 13 knockouts with a first-round TKO win in the Philippines. Super middleweight Daryl Williams prospect improved to 16-0, 6 knockouts with a majority decision in a 10-rounder in London. And then there was a card in Glasgow, Scotland with a few prospects. So Gary Murray, 154-pound prospect, he improves to 12-0, 0 KOs. 0 KOs in pro boxing. Good luck, buddy. I don't know. Jason Easton improved to 10-0 and 6 knockouts with a TKO 9 win. He's a 140-pound prospect worth keeping an eye on. But Josh Taylor, 140-pound prospect himself, he improves to 10-0 with 9 knockouts with a TKO 7 win over Ohara Davies. Davies took a knee in the 3rd round, knocked him down in the 7th round, got him out of there. Taylor now has the Commonwealth Junior welterweight title. Definitely a prospect worth keeping your eye on. I thought he looked great in this fight. Ohara Davies, a lot of people thought that this is going to be a really, really competitive fight. I think he kind of built himself up on social media with the talking and everything. But I love seeing 2 undefeated prospects go head-to-head like this. Neither guy had to do that, right? We see a lot of prospects, particularly here in the United States, under a certain promotional banner, get just fed cans until they build up a record of 20-something and 0. Well, here you had 2 guys, still getting their careers started and going head-to-head. Someone's had to go, and it was Davies in this case. So Josh Taylor, definitely a prospect worth keeping your eye on. A lot of action going on this weekend, and I'm going to be off the grid. I might be tweeting here and there, but I'm pretty much going to be off the grid, and I hate that I'm going to miss all these fights, man, because they're going to be awesome. Over in Thailand, a guy known by Knockout CP Freshmart, but his real name is Tamanun Niyongchong. I'm probably butchering that, but I tried my best. Obviously a Thai fighter. He's defending his WBA minimum weight title. He's 15-0, 7 knockouts. He won the interim version of this title back in 2014 and had a few fights with that interim title, and then finally got the full title in 2016. This will be his 3rd defense, going up against Filipino Ray Loreto. So that's going down in Thailand. Now, in Wembley, it's a fight I talked about earlier. Chris Eubank Jr. going up against Arthur Abraham. The winner of this one is in that 1st round against the Turkish fighter in the World Boxing Super Series. Eubank has only had 1 fight at super middleweight. Arthur Abraham has been fighting there since 2009. So you want to look at who's the harder hitter and the more battle-tested guy at super middleweight. The guy who's fought the much, much better opposition, been in there with everybody. Obviously, that's Abraham. But at this stage of Abraham's career, he pretty much shells up and just lets you hit him, and then he tries to counter. And he just doesn't have the quickness or reflexes to really, really tag Eubank, I think, cleanly. Eubank's gonna hit a lot of shoulders, gloves, arms, but the judges there in London are going to reward him for his activity and his work rate. And I think he gets a decision here. If he really wanted to make a statement and actually could somehow stop Abraham, that would be impressive. But I don't see that happening. I see him winning a decision here and punching his ticket into that big tournament that starts up in a couple months. Now, in New York, in Uniondale, New York, there's actually a PBC card on. I totally forgot about this one, but Omar Figueroa, remember him? Last fought in December of 2015. He is going up against Robert Guerrero, who last fought in August of 2016. Robert Guerrero has lost 4 of his last 6, and he's kind of just a hired gun at this point. You'd have to favor Figueroa just based on youth and everything, but he's been so inactive. He's had weight issues. I don't think his heart's really in boxing. Say what you will about Robert Guerrero. He's fought everybody, doesn't really have it anymore, was never really a truly great fighter or anything, but his heart is in it. His heart's still in the sport. So all things considered, this is going to be a fun fight. But you got a kid from Texas in Figueroa, a guy from California in Guerrero, and they're fighting in upstate New York. I'm sorry, they're fighting in Long Island, I think. Yeah, Uniondale. So I don't know how that makes any sense, but the other fight on this card makes a lot of sense in New York. Marcus Brown, 19-0 from Staten Island, 26 years old, 6'1", 75-inch reach, southpaw. He was an Olympian. Last fought this February, going up against Sean Monahan, 28-0, New York native. I think he's from Long Island as well. He's older. He's 35, advanced age. 5'11", 72-inch reach. Hasn't fought yet this year. Last fought in December of 2016. The other big Long Islander who's fighting this weekend, Joe Smith Jr. He last fought in December of 2016. A lot of people thought we were going to see probably sometime earlier in the spring this year a Smith-Monahan fight. For several different reasons, that just didn't work out. And then they were talking about several different possibilities for Monahan. But here it is. He's fighting Marcus Brown here. And all things considered, style-wise, pretty even matchup. I'm pretty interested in that one. I've never been overly impressed with either one of these fighters, but just the style matchup, Brown could be kind of a stinker, but he hits pretty hard. And Monahan, you know, not hard to hit, hits hard himself. So I think that's going to be a fun fight. Also on that card, Arthur Szpilka, making his ring return since, I think it was last January when he fought Deontay Wilder. Won a few rounds early in that fight and then got knocked out. Highlight reel knockout loss for him. He's coming back and fighting a Polish-born, Brooklyn-based Adam Kownacki, who's 15-0. I haven't seen much of Kownacki, so I really don't know what he's going to bring to the table. I know that he hasn't fought anybody on the level even of an Arthur Szpilka. But Szpilka's been out of the ring for a year and a half. Did that do him some good? Did he blow up in weight and get fat? We'll find out. I think that's going to be a fun fight because you're going to have 2 Polish guys battling it out. That's basically the European version of 2 Mexican guys battling it out. There's just pride on the line. And I've just never seen 2 Polish guys fight each other and it be bad. It's just, generally speaking, they make for good action fights. The big fun card, though, is here in LA. And it just so happens I'm going to be on vacation when it comes here. I actually planned my trip to Detroit long before this triple header on HBO was announced. And when they announced it on July 15th, I just went, don't! Figures, fucking figures, you know. They put it on, not the weekend before, not the weekend after, the weekend I'm out of town. But guys, this is an outstanding triple header. And my favorite fight here, well, let's start with the 130-pound fights because I think the winner of these 2 fights are going to fight each other next. Miguel Berchelt, who last fought in January and chopped down Francisco Vargas. Really a breakout performance by Berchelt, who's 31-1 with 28 knockouts. He's going up against Takashi Miura, who can't be in a bad fight. He's been in several Fight of the Years or Fight of the Year contenders over the last few years. He's 31-3 with 2 draws, 24 knockouts. He fought on that card as well, fought Miguel Roman. But he was favored to win that fight a little easier than he did. Looked a little long in the tooth, looked a little old. I think he's just so worn down from all those battles. I expect Berchelt to come out. And by the way, he knew he was going to fight Miura going into that fight against Francisco Vargas should he win. That's what he wanted. In fact, Mike Baca with UCN Live, talking to him today when we shot 10 count episodes, was telling me he interviewed Berchelt, who actually told him he took a photo with Takashi Miura before their 2 fights back in January. And he said, and Baca asked him why. And Berchelt said, that's who I'm fighting next after tonight. I'm going to fight that guy next. So he knew right then and there that's where his focus was. And I think he's going to come in here sharp as a blade and just cut up Miura and chop him down. Some competitive early rounds, but I'm looking for a mid to late round stoppage win for Berchelt. And for Miura, it's getting close to being time for him to hang him up. It's getting close. I'm not suggesting he needs to now, but unless, look, he might turn back the clock here and put in a great performance, but I think he's going to take a beating in this fight. That's just the feeling I have. Time maybe to go back to Japan and have a couple of feel-good wins for him probably after this fight, and then think about possibly hanging him up. Maybe one more title opportunity. We'll see. Depends on what we see Saturday. But I like that matchup a lot. It's kind of a showcase for Berchelt, though. It's just the feeling I have. Other fight, Jazreel Corrales, Panamanian fighter, who fought twice in Japan last year. Really showed his mettle, beating Takashi Uchiyama twice over there in Japan. So went to the Lion's Den, got the victory twice. This is his first bout of 2017, though. Hasn't fought yet this year. Defending his WBA 130-pound title. And by the way, that Berchelt-Miura fight is for the WBC version of the 130-pound title. Corrales is 21-1 with 8 knockouts. Not the most powerful puncher, but he's accurate and he can catch you with good counter shots. Going up against Robinson Castellanos, Mexican fighter. A lot of you might be scratching your head. Where have I heard that name before? What do I know? He fought in May against Yuriorkis Gamboa and essentially retired him. Essentially ruined the plan that Golden Boy Promotions had when they picked up Yuriorkis Gamboa. They wanted to match him against Jazreel Corrales. And since Castellanos kind of upset that plan, he gets the fight here. So Robinson Castellanos, the record isn't beautiful. It's 24-12 with 14 knockouts. But this guy, he's battle tested. He's been in there with some good quality up-and-coming fighters from Golden Boy stable that are coming up. And he's lost most of those fights, but he's been competitive, very competitive. And with that big win over Gamboa, he's coming in here beaming with confidence. Not hard to hit, but he's tall, lanky, awkward, and he's going to bring it. So I think that this fight, on paper, it looks like a mismatch. But I'm telling you right now, it's going to be more competitive early on than you think, and it's going to be fun. Because Corrales, again, doesn't hit that hard, and Castellanos can take a punch. So it's going to be interesting. But the fight that I'm most looking forward to, the light heavyweight matchup between Joe Smith Jr. and Sullivan Berrera. This is one of my favorite matchups of 2017. And we've had a loaded 2017 so far. Only halfway through, right? I love this damn fight. Love it, love it, love it. Joe Smith Jr., 23-1, 19 knockouts. Last fought in December when he basically retired Bernard Hopkins for good. Knocked him out of the ring. I was there at the forum. And I've talked about this a few times. I was only a few rows back. It was because it happened right in front of press row. And just seeing that, it was such a dramatic moment. There was just this finality to it. It just clearly marked the end for one guy and the beginning for another guy. Joe Smith was the breakthrough fighter in 2016, right? But we got to be real, guys. He beat Andres Fonfara, who you could hit blindfolded. You can hit Fonfara. Not hard to hit. We know that Smith has power because of the way he hit Fonfara and the way he hit Hopkins, who's not hard to hit at this stage of his career either. But neither one of those guys is a world beater at this stage. Now, Fonfara was rated in the top 10, but and Hopkins is a legend. But when we look at Sullivan Berrera, who is 19-1 with 14 knockouts, he went 12 hard rounds with Andre Ward back in March of 2016 and was competitive with Ward. Busted Ward's face up a little bit. He got dropped in that fight, but he has looked really good since that point. I think those 12 rounds that he had in there with Ward really taught him a lot. And he's come back swinging since then. He's looked really good. He got back in the ring that December after that loss to Ward, right around the time Smith fought Hopkins, and he beat Vyacheslav Shabransky, who was undefeated at the time. Not hard to hit, not a defensive wizard by any means, but had shown good whiskers. And Berrera just chopped him down and got him out of there. It was almost shocking the way that he befuddled Shabransky like that. Looked great in that fight. And then in April, he was supposed to fight a much better fighter, but it fell through. Ends up fighting Paul Parker and getting a win there. So Joe Smith hasn't fought yet in 2017. Sullivan Berrera has. He's been more active. Overall, he's faced the better opposition. Those 12 rounds that he had with Andre Ward really trumps Joe Smith's whole career as far as experience, as far as facing a guy at his absolute peak and all that 12 rounds of experience to learn from. And it really appears that he has learned from those 12 rounds. So you want to give the slight edge to Berrera. But the power of Joe Smith. I just talked about the fact that, Ward, who doesn't hit that hard, he's hitting harder at light heavyweight than he hit at super middleweight. I think he was killing himself to make super middleweight for so long. But he's not a really hard hitter. And he was able to drop Berrera with a counterpunch. I think Ward was up on the ropes. It was kind of similar, very similar to the punch Joe Smith landed on Fonfara that knocked him out, that nearly decapitated him. I think if Smith lands something big, he can really hurt Berrera and knock him out. What we don't know, the X factor here, is how good of a punch can Joe Smith take? Because we've seen Smith can be hit, and he had a fight earlier in his career where he broke his jaw, and the fight was stopped, where he had an injury. So, maybe something like that could return and haunt him. We don't know yet. But if Joe Smith can take Berrera's punch, I think what we're going to see is Berrera outboxing him in the early rounds. I think he might be ahead halfway through. But I think at some point, Joe Smith lands something big and changes this fight. Either way, I don't think this fight's going the distance. I just don't. Joe Smith Jr. hasn't been the distance yet. Berrera has. So it's possible Berrera could win a decision here if Joe Smith can take his shots and everything. But I just have this feeling, it's just a gut feeling, that Smith is going to land something in the middle to late rounds that changes the dynamic of this fight. And it goes from a technical kind of fight where both guys are respecting each other's power, and it opens up. And at that point, it's anyone's fight. And I just have this feeling Joe Smith is going to get a late TKO. But if I was a betting man, I'd probably say Berrera by decision. Either way, the winner of this fight is obviously a top 5 light heavyweight. And depending on how even this fight is fought at, depending on how competitive it is, both fighters after the fight, even the loser of this fight, may still be a top 5 light heavyweight. So this is the kind of matchup. I just think back to HBO Boxing After Dark in the 90s. This was the kind of matchup we saw all the time. So this is just good stuff, and it's just more proof that 2017 is the year that keeps on giving in boxing. Guys, again, if you're in Detroit, hit me up if you want to do a meetup or something like that. I'm going on vacation. I'm going to be off the radar for a week. Thank you so much for all the support on the channel. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Check out the Patreon. I'll see you at the fights.